Well,
Yeah, David.
yeah, I will get the record because I also always forget to do that too when I pause it at first. But yeah, but I do appreciate everyone being here and at least being able to have this discussion that we can share with others. And so why don't we just go and start off and do some introductions and everyone like Amy, Dave, feel free to introduce yourselves as well. And this is and here comes, oh, terrific! I'm glad Lauren's able to make it. So we can have this just be a really great casual conversation, but I think one that is very useful to have and one I'm excited to learn from. So so Sabrina, who are you?
Hi, I'm Sabrina Caluori.
Lord mercy.
Hello. And I am the former EVP of Digital and Marketing at HBO, and currently in a consulting capacity and longtime friend of Berkowitz and fan of serial marketers. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And Martin.
Hi, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm Martin Obiozor. I am the strange person who is not in New York. I am in Houston, Texas, sweltering today in our 97-degree heat. Heat wave that has hit here with rain. I am the owner of a marketing agency called Empowered Pulse since 2014, and happy to be here today.
And Lauren Hazel's business partner. So.
Yes, Lauren and I are doing a lot of business stuff together. I even got convinced her to move down here, so she's becoming a Texan too.
So congrats on getting a convert there. And Matt, what about you?
Hi, I'm Mat Zucker. I'm a senior partner at Profit, the management consultancy. I lead our marketing practice, or co-lead it globally. And recently, to plug David, I profiled him on Forbes.com and the serial community. So if you have joined and you want to know the beginnings and the real story behind the story, you can find it on Forbes.com. So happy to be here, David. Thanks for having us.
No, thanks for doing that. And it's a nice piece to feature on the community homepage and everything. So so definitely got some terrific members from there. And then yeah, so I mean, I want to keep things kind of open-ended as we get into more of the conversation, but I am just curious to start here. I mean, what does pride mean to each of you right now? And keep this as a jump ball, so whoever wants to start with that.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Pride is an interesting concept for me because it's somewhat new to me. I'm a foreigner. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I'm an immigrant here. Most people can't tell because they're like, you speak perfect English. Well, I got here when I was 1.5, but it takes forever to get naturalized. That whole path to citizenship nonsense, that actually is a thing. And so being in the closet for so long, I really didn't understand this history because it's not my history. It's the history of here, even though we have our own problems with it. And so in the process of coming out, I came out very late in my life. I came out at 35 for a long time. And as I said, as a result of my midlife crisis, which is the best thing that I ever went through, I recommend everybody needs to have a midlife crisis. It's the best thing. I came out a completely different person. I came out as an entrepreneur. It was a great thing. So pride for me is about, one, I needed to learn the history of pride in America, why this is where it is. And I did, and I was like, wow, this happened. This is fascinating. It mirrors the civil rights movement that happens. There's so many similar parallels. It mirrors the women's suffrage movement. It seems this is there's always a phrase that says, if you don't learn the things from history, you're doomed to repeat them. And it seems like it's kind of repeated in different areas because it's a similar parallel. I think we're going through another form of that in there. So for me, pride is about being happy now and celebrating who you are, who I am, being able to actually, for once, be my authentic self, which for at least for over 30 years, I was not.
Amazing. Thanks, Martin. Sabrina, want to run with that?
Yeah, first of all, that's awesome. Congratulations, Martin. I have sort of an opposite experience in that I think I always knew I was gay and had the sort of benefit of leaving. I grew up in Florida and I left Florida when I turned 18 and had already started to kind of tell my inner circle that maybe maybe I wasn't straight, and came out very quickly after that in college. But pride for me, I think it took a different meaning when I became a mother. So I have 3 small children, and pride has become about, it's definitely about celebration. And Martin, I love that you use that word. And it's about, I think there's, as we talk about heteronormative behaviors, and it's an opportunity to sort of celebrate what makes us different, and what is special about the community. And I love being able to share that with my kids and to bring them to things like the parade and experiences that really show the diversity of the LGBTQ community, beyond just our experience.
Great. That's Sabrina. Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I go to a mix of places. I mean, my starting point for it is really happy. I met my husband on Pride in New York in 1999, and we got married like 2 years later. Like, so it's my anniversary, so it has all these happy things. And my parents would march in the parades with me, so that was really cool. One time my brother showed up and I thought he was there to support me, and he was, but he was also passing off from my mother the engagement diamond to give to his fiance. So it was also like he joined us for the parade to get the grandma's diamond. Like, it's really funny, so like he's like, great, Matt, gotta go. And he went back to the Upper West Side. So it's a very happy time for me. But I did grow up in the 70s and 80s, and when I came to New York in 91, 92, and it was still a time of like, it was happy pride, but it was also, there was a lot of death, and there was a lot of anger, and there was also a lot of tension. And the generation before me, like people were just not there, and so it's got these mixed emotions. And we're shaped so much by our experiences, so that still sticks with me. So my second place I go to is like the fight, and a little bit of anger, and that it's not over, and so. And it can be both, but it's, I think sometimes people forget the history, and we need both, because it's, but we can go with the happy place now today if you want.
So I mean, some of the perspective I have as a cis person is so very much an outsider to some of this conversation, but clearly, in the New York and ad industry, and there's a lot that I've seen change from growing up in Westchester in the 80s and 90s, when just didn't know what a gay or queer person like this just didn't come up, at least in the circles I was in, to coming in the city where it's like you just get exposed to so much more, and people are just so much more free to be themselves. What's also been interesting for me is seeing a lot of the changes in the workforce, and like on the ad agency side, and other parts of the marketing world, where for me, again, I feel like the changes happen extremely quickly. Even if I think to around the time that I left 360i in 2013, that it's still like, I mean, 360, a wonderful culture, very open, tolerant, inclusive place, but it wasn't something where it came up very often. It wasn't like inclusivity toward LGBTQ members, but it just wasn't an as active part of the conversation. To within a few years later, it seemed like agencies and other marketing organizations were touting this as something that like they were allies. They were looking for ways to go and just understand how to make themselves more inclusive place to work and be just part of some of the solution in that way. I'm curious, just being in the workforce and in these marketing and advertising roles, what that's been like for you. Does it feel like there's been a lot of progress? Does it felt fast? Like what's it been like going through this? And yeah, how has that seemed for you?
I guess I'll start. I think there's an amazing progress. I mean, I started in a creative department at Footcone and Belding in New York in '92, and advertising New York, right, should be super tolerant and easy and the most creative place. And it was fine. Like I was just like a secretary in the creative department, and everybody knew I was gay, and it was fine. And people kind of thought it was a goofy thing, but there was a boys club, and there was like a straight boys club, and I was still a little odd, and I was still a little different. And with clients, no one ever told me not to be out to my clients. But there was, like with RJR Tibet, like there was definitely something there that is really, really, I don't feel now. So I've been out my whole career, and it hasn't been hard for me. I've been very lucky. But I don't know what was said behind my back. I don't know what happened when I'm not in the room. I do find advertising is trying to change, right? Be less cis male, like less white, like a lot of things right now, and so it's definitely improving in its diversity and its thought, and I think it feels great now. Like it feels easy. Like at our firm, like there's just a lot of people that are out. A lot of people are joining every day. Our little pride group that we started last year. So I'm curious about on the client side, Sabrina, what it's like. But I'm very encouraged by what it is, but I don't forget what it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I was at HBO for 13 years, and I was out when I joined. I get assumed that I am straight, and so it was more that for the first few years, that sort of conversation where you have to like repeatedly come out over and over and over again, because the assumption, is that, to answer the questions about, my husband and my kids or whatever it might be. And you definitely like clock the reactions to people when you say, well, actually it's my wife or my girlfriend or whatever it was. But I mean, it's one of the most liberal media companies, in the country. And so even there, I kind of still felt like there is this sort of assumption about heterosexuality that was hard, I think, to shake from people. And it definitely started to change. But and as I sort of grew up as an executive, definitely felt the difference between sort of being in the rank and file and then being in the executive level, where you just really don't see that, except for in the LA creative community. But I think for me, the real difference and what was really where I started to see change, but also the change being the challenge that comes with real change, is that in my final few years of my team, I had 2 team members, 2 trans team members go through transition while in the office place. And that was an entirely different experience, both as a leader of that group and of these folks who I cared about deeply, but also like the struggle in the organization to do things like not treat gender as a binary tick box on, on your application form, and kind of all of these challenges with bathrooms. And that's where I really started to see we are an LGBTQ inclusive workplace get pressure tested to like, what does that really mean in the day to day when you start to really support the community in a bigger, more diverse way.
And I'm curious, like, to what extent were you part of those who were like trying to flag some of these changes that needed to be made, and even an organization like that, where does the change ultimately come? Like who decides to change the symbols on the bathrooms or things like that?
Yeah, it's I was definitely part of the change and the conversation, mainly because I was one of the most senior out executives in the company and had a long relationship with the out group. The leaders of the out group were also in my department and things like that. But a lot of it is like bureaucracy, meaning like there is the right intention, and I felt like, at least prior to our AT&T acquisition, there was no question about like the integrity and the heart of the company, right? It was more about like, I don't know how to, like, you would have a conversation, with HR, and you're like, I don't even know how to do that. Like, I don't even know if the HR software allows us to have a third option. Like it was like the red tape kind of stuff that became more of the challenge. That was different post AT&T acquisition, because there was a bigger question about, where does our sort of heart lie? And so that became more of like, well, now we have to ask 5 different people than I think when we were sort of acting as the HBO brand.
Great, thanks, Sabrina. Martin, what about for you?
Oh, my journey begins with a little bit of a costume change. So, like all great stories, we have a very different story. So I have my little jester hat because that tells you a little bit of our story.
Please tell me there won't be musical numbers in this story, because I'm dying for that.
That is possible. Never tempt an extrovert that loves to sing and dance to sing and dance, because you might get what you ask for. So my journey is a little different. I'm an engineer by background, graduated from Auburn, and so I've spent 22 years at ExxonMobil as a data scientist, and so I have that bed. I still work there, and I'm planning on leaving in the next year because I'm growing my agency. I'm done, so done it's not even funny. Lauren can attest to that, as we have lots of conversations. And so watching the journey at ExxonMobil was the Fortune 1 company for a longest period of time. It is interesting to think about it, because I tell youngins that I mentor, ExxonMobil is what mentored the dinosaurs. It told dirt it was old, what old meant. And seeing the journey of that, I was terrified. That's why coming out took so long, because I was absolutely beyond terrified I would be fired. I work in a right to fire state, so we don't have many employees. This is Texas, so businesses have the right to fire for whatever reason that they have. We didn't have the EEO policy for the longest time added as a national protected right. And so we've been fighting. So for the longest time, I was in the closet. We had a pride group at work. We called it Pride. And it was to tell you how terrified people are. We had an in list and an out list. So you know how you have a company address book and Outlook and Exchange. Anybody can go read who's in those distribution lists, right? You guys see all your different systems have these kinds of things. So that was the out list. The private list was a spreadsheet that was kept in a secure place so that people would be BCC'd. So you wouldn't know who who was in the, and they took such care in the Pride group to do, but I'm giving you a picture of where I came from, so that you understand. To Fastly, the Pride group organized as an affinity group because there was a minority group for the Latinos, there's a minority group for African Americans, and there's a women's group. We fought in 2008 to become a affinity group inside of the company recognized, and they did. To Keith, I talked to Keith, he just retired earlier this year. He was great in doing that. It's around that point that I decided it was time for me to work this process. Is when I met my husband. He was so amazing to me. He put up with me for being in closet for 10 years before I came out. He wanted to wait, and he knew it was my journey. And I had to go through so much stuff to get there. So I watch ExxonMobil. I watch us trying to deal with Massachusetts, which was the first state to do gay marriage. That was huge. And the negative backlash from managers, but HR was kind of like, well, if we have offices in Massachusetts, we have to do this. And there was a satellite office over there and stuff like that. I had to watch Mobil, who had domestic partnerships, lose their domestic partnerships when they merged with ExxonMobil. I watched all of this, and then all of a sudden the magic happened. The Supreme Court decision in, I believe it was June of 2015. Please, somebody check my math somewhere around there. It feels like 2015 in my head happened. And literally rainbows burst forth in ExxonMobil like the 4th of July, hand motions included. It was amazing. Policies started changing top down. We could participate in the Pride as a company. Like we would march down the Pride parade and sponsor things. And that first year I was taking care of my dad. So I wasn't able to go to the first Pride parade. That was 2015. They had 15 people from ExxonMobil. You need to understand, this is a company of 100,000 people at the time. Only 15, and 20,000 of which live here in Houston, work in Houston. 15 people, that was it. The next year, which I participated, 190. The year after that, 380. Year after that, 470. There's not that many gay people. We had so much support, and now, because it was pent up, they've really tried to move the needle forward. So it's been fascinating going from terrified, hiding in the closet, really not even hiding in the closet. We're hiding behind Fort Knox. I mean, you have to really pry to get us out to where we are now, and that we're starting to become comfortable. Now, that was from a policy perspective. Now you get to the, I'm going to call it the social perspective. Zach mentioned, there's the Old Boys Club. Oh gosh, we taught your company what the Old Boys Club was, and that's still present. There's still an air of that kind of thing, but they now know it's not. The tolerance for that behavior is so, I don't even know how to put it. They know it's wrong. If you try it, you will be fired. I mean, because HR has taken a zero tolerance perspective on that in the company, which is fascinating. I mean, like I said, total 180 has happened. So that, these people have these feelings. You can kind of, you can feel what other people feel if you're an empath like I am. You can feel that energy sometimes, but it's gotten very difficult to action that level of discrimination. We have other forms of discrimination, issues with women. I'm not even going to go there. Issues with minorities. That's there. Be issues around being gay. That's strange. Feels like it went away in 2018. It's hard. It's really weird. And I have to tell you, 2016 we were Fort Knox. 2018 we're shooting rainbows everywhere. It's odd to me. It's hard. That speed is fascinating.
There's a lot of positive energy. There's a lot of positive energy, yes. But people aren't always, I'm finding they're not sure what to do with it. They're kind of asking. So like how to be a good ally. Yes. What should I do? I had a partner call, after we introduced pronouns, I had a partner call me on the phone and be like, should I do it? I'm like, do you want to do it? He's like, do I have to? Like, it was just an interesting conversation of support, but of a
not
type
knowing
of
how
words.
to do it, and not
Yeah.
and wanting to be respectful of support,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
actually to me the most important things. A lot of these people come in with the I feel like I want to ask a stupid question, and I tell you there's no stupid question. The only stupid question is that which is never asked. And
Yeah.
so ask the question. My goal is always to create an air of safety where you feel you can ask the air quotes stupid question. It's not just about this. I've had in the last year far more about that space for being a minority, and what is, things about microaggressions and entitlement and all that kind of conversations. And I find that apparently I'm making it safe. I'm doing my mission. That's my choice, by the way, to be a guide for people to just figure out how they've had things in their mind and how do they shift to this place that they think that they want to. They're curious, they're scared, but they also want to do it with respect. They don't want to offend, and that's been really interesting for me. And
I
so,
always tell people
yeah.
when they want to help, I'm like, here's what you can do. If you really want to help me,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the room when I'm not. So
Yes.
when you see something, I don't want you to say something. I want you to shut it down. I want you to like slap. I need you to like cut off that person, to put them back in their place, to tell them it's unacceptable, because it means, it means a lot, right?
Exactly.
And if you do that, that's the one thing I always ask from people too, because
and like I
they
said, I
kind of get
will.
excited about it. They kind of get rallied by it. Like, all right, I'm
They
gonna go
really
look,
do.
and they're gonna look for trouble, which is great. Like go for it.
So for me, that's so hard for ExxonMobil people. So I actually have to tell them how you shut it down. I literally have had to do that level explain. It's not just you say that. It's like, this is not appropriate. This is, you say
Wow.
these words, say this script. I've actually given scripts to people. And that's what's needed. We're so, I feel like as a company, I told you we're dinosaurs. So we're so far behind the wokeness. We need a little bit more hand-holding to get there. But it's been an interesting journey to watch this from a benefits perspective. I went from being in a closet to there and getting married within a year. My partner, even though we've been together now 14 years, I got married in 2016 when we could. And seeing that accepted, people at work want to meet him, and all this kind of, it's just this fascinating transition from where we are. And some of me hasn't processed it a lot in a certain level. And I just kind of decided, you know what, it's go with it. Just go with it. This intention is good. Them donating to Pride, putting things up there. Unlike a lot of what I call the demonstrative things, and I hope we're going to talk about that. This is the angry side, Zach, that you were bringing up, of what I call people posting rainbows everywhere and funding Mitch McConnell to shut down gay rights and transgender rights at the same time. That was AT&T. They just did this. That kind of performative thing. Lauren and I have talked about it with in the comic book space. She called some people out on things like that. We have to do that. I've been surprised that ExxonMobil has been very willing to back where it's putting its money, at least in this issue, only this space. I feel like it's being very clear of where it stands with its money, with its influence as much as it can, at least as far as we can see. Lord knows what secret things happen behind the rooms in there, but what's out there, I'm not seeing what I call the AT&T thing. Or the Delta thing with, celebrate Black Lives Matter. And they're the ones who fund the Georgia law for voter suppression. They were like one of the chief sponsors of it, was Delta Airlines. And so it's things of that nature that I am concerned about, that's happening out there in other places. I don't know what you guys are seeing in your different businesses that you work for, if you own I'm curious to know, are you seeing that demonstrative performative act out there? And what is your advice about, how do you deal with that and call it out? Because to me, the only thing we can do is call it out.
Sabrina, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I left. I left AT&T after they bought HBO, and it was like a very clear conflict of integrity. I don't know. I mean, so much of this has been happening. It's interesting because you're right, Martin, and like there's this. I feel like there's this performative and also this like, well, I support you loving who you want to love. And some of this has been around for a while, but like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. And then I feel like the line for our trans family is just, it's like a different line. It's like we've moved up to that one now. And like that, you know, even on a one, not even just like at the brand level, but on a one-to-one conversation, the amount of conversations where I could have where some members of my own family can be, you know, loving and as accepting as they can be towards me and my lifestyle, but just the thought about thinking about, you know, the transgender community just like it's just too far for them, and there's this feeling like then they shut down. And so it's like they can support me personally, but will be like out actively supporting anti-trans communications bills or sharing misinformation or whatever it
And
might be.
I'm stuck in this dichotomy. How do you deal with it other than calling it out? Because then you get ostracized as the, oh, they're the sensitive one, and they're
Yeah.
the you get othered. You know how, and when you get othered, the listening muscles stop. And I'm struggling with this. I'm really asking advice out here. You know, are you seeing these things? Because I see them a lot because I live in the state that doesn't kind of care in certain ways. It's actually a nice place to live, and there's actually a lot of caring people. Contrary to popular belief, there's actually a lot. I actually live in the more New York part of Texas, which is Houston. But you still see this dichotomy, and it's
You know,
fascinating.
I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but if you look for the heroes and you amplify them, when I was at Ogilvy for many years, and when we started the ESGs, the executive team made a very interesting decision that the executive sponsor of each ESG would not be necessarily. So like I was in like Ogilvy Pride, the sponsor was the straight white CEO. And it was just really like he loved, like it was,
That's what we did at ExxonMobil too.
Oh, really? So like, yeah, I was just suggest.
Yeah,
like,
we made one of the vice presidents of one of the companies.
So
they own Pride.
To go be a hero, it looks good for them, right? So it plays to their advantage, and it's great crossover. Things like that can be really, because there are people out there who with this energy who want to do really good work and things, and they know it's in their best interest, and they know it's a crazy war for talent the next couple of years, especially in like professional services, in a lot of industries. So it's yeah, it's a good time to be on the right side of right.
Yeah, I'm finding that one of the things, and at some point, David, I assume I'm just going to spill it, is talking about allyship. To me, allyship is such a, it's like I almost want to start crying talking about it, that I wouldn't be where I was without allyship. I came from a place of thinking that I was an abomination and didn't deserve to be loved. And it's so weird to say that out loud right now, because the person who just said that right now does not identify with that anymore, which means I have changed, which is great because it's weird. But I have the memories so strongly of me believing that. And it took allyship to get me through that, because I come from a culture where this is not allowed. I'm also Roman Catholic, so that doesn't help. On top of it, I mean, I had like, call it the trifecta of woes. And so one thing that I remember, I'll call her Becky is my work spouse, my day job. She's a straight woman, and so we decided we're work spouses because we like fight with each other and like really loudly, and then we'll hug in 5. I mean, we get along. We're like of one brain, and I think everybody has a work spouse. If you don't, you should get one. They're really useful. And so she's a cis white woman, and she's an ally. And she told me when I came out, she was the first person I came out to at work, and she already knew. I thought I was in slick all this time, it's these little spells. But the first thing she told me is she looked at me with almost tears and said, "What made you feel like you couldn't trust me to tell me this?" And I was like, the first thing I tell allies is you need to understand what we go through as gays and trying to come out is a disease of the mind. we have stories that we stew in. We don't live in these stories. We marinate in these stories in our head all the time, and we make them true. We have to work through that. And it takes you being you. You always telling me about this gay friend that you had, and you would say things like that to make it known that you were an ally. I knew she was doing this, but yet I was terrified of the idea of coming out to her. But I wanted her to know, you need to understand, you were the first person at work I wanted to tell, because of that allyship. So you need to keep being you, being open, sharing stories, and just do what you're doing, because as we're working through what we're working through, and some people don't have to, it's they're out loud and proud, or maybe you have the torturous journey that I had. Everything in between, the allyship is so important, that you're there, that we know you're not going to unlove us when we finally get to this place, which is the fear of a lot of us, that we're going to lose this support. And that's, for those who are wondering, how do you do that? Just keep being you. If you're positive, throw things out there. Ask about things, say certain things in this way. Don't try to out people. That is actually, to me, the number one thing you shouldn't do, because that just puts people into a trauma. But I would, if anybody's asking on how to be a better ally, these kinds of things are that, because we need to walk our journey. We need to live and overcome some of the greatest traumas that we have had in our heads, because a lot of it lives in our heads. Some of it is actually real, but it doesn't matter. We can heal from trauma. That's a process. It doesn't matter if it's PTSD, if it's going to war, or, oh my God, I love somebody of the same sex. Oh my God, I am born a man, but I really feel like I'm a female inside. And these are terrifying things, because you're not normal, air quotes. And by the way, what the hell is normal? What is that anymore? It's like the funniest thing, because that's what we say in our heads. We're not normal. And what is normal, and why would you want to be that? It's kind of boring to me. But you have to go through that journey, and allies are so important in just being there, knowing that you're going to be there when the crap hits the fan and you come out. I don't know what you guys feel about allyship, but for me, it's such a thing that it almost brings tears to my eyes, of those who have been there for me, still are here. They came to my wedding, they hugged my husband, and tried to go to him and get all the secret dirt on me so they could use it no, it's funny.
Yeah, no,
It's been so wonderful having those are true friends.
I'm
And
really
I didn't
touched
know
by
it at the time.
I'm really touched by it too, and it makes me want to be a better ally to other people, and do the same. To find out how to do that. I mean, even within the gay community, it's hard to be to appreciate what it's like to be a woman or to be a person of color. Like, you just don't. There's so many differences and what people go through, or in different countries. Like, I found a certain naivete I had about what it's like to be gay in our different offices in the world, and I can't take it for granted. The whole world is not the Netherlands, right? And I've learned that I don't even know what our policies are in China and other places about how to protect people, or what you can ask them, or how to stand up to clients or something like that, or can someone ask off a piece of business if they're uncomfortable, and what do you do?
And Sabrina, is there anything you want to add to that? There's one more line of question I'd love to get into.
No, the only thing I'd say that I think is important, and I think has been, which you're all touching on, and I think has been more present in the last couple of years, and I think is positive, not just in our community, but more broadly, is intersectionality, and how do we really think about, our identity as LGBTQ, but also how that intersects with my identity as a mother or a woman, and understanding, to your point, Matt. And I think I've had, I think as there's been more freedom to have more conversations, and just really understanding how that gay experience is different in all of the ways that have been pointed out. And so I think that also has been a new dynamic to the last few years.
Well, Thank you. One thing I'd love to just hear everyone's thoughts about, basically summed up by representation, and see just so much more day in day out. I mean, here this week where remember the Oakland Raiders comes out.
That was great. That was great.
And same week as this Japanese superstar also do, you know, like and so now you see just like I just one by one and you just see just how on so many like I mean the thing I love most about Mayor Pete's campaign for president and his very successful campaign for a cabinet position that he seemed to be campaigning for quite a while too, was how boring his marriage to Jason and
I know.
it's
I
like,
know. It's so
it's
great.
just so but this idea now that like that this this politician can go and kiss his husband on the campaign trail and like that no the controversy is what he did in Iraq or what he did for McKinsey. It's you know so there's very little of that plan like he was the clear a lot that he was the first prominent gay politician,
And
but
he took religion on, like, which is not everyone can do, but he used religion back on it because it's often an argument. And I thought it was very compelling the way he did that, the way he did. We just haven't seen that done very often that publicly before.
so this and yeah now he's in like one of the more boring parts of the cabinet. He's making infrastructure very exciting and sexy now. So I think he's one of the best marketers I've ever seen. One of the only politicians who was able to convince me to read their book and love that too. But on that broader sense, so there's representation, but there's also a lot of like I don't even know if there's the term of gay washing like the same way we've had some of that greenwashing or but you have someone it's like okay so we'll put a few we'll put a few gay lesbian couples in our ads in June and then come July like those are off the air. Versus some brands that really seem to mean this and this gets into some of what Martin was talking about before, but I'm curious what you're all seeing as both in areas where you're influencing the marketing, that you're part of these companies or advising those that are making these ads, and just students and aficionados of the industry, just like how the industry is doing with representation of LGBTQ people in marketing and advertising, and what that looks like today.
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift. I mean, you can see it in casting, like, there's more people being better represented in communications than ever before. I think what is, and if it doesn't happen, which really, this happened to me recently where we were doing a campaign and the board of the client that was seeing the advertising before it went out asked for more representation in it. That's pretty cool, right? Like that not the crazy creative people did it right, but somebody else was asking for more of it. Now, the trick, of course, is people aren't stupid. So when a company isn't that diverse, it's not like gay washing, but it's like they haven't fulfilled their promise. So it's, it gets a little tricky and consumers will call it out. They'll call it out on Facebook, world's angriest platform, or they'll call it out somewhere else about if you're not really doing that. Just like Fearless Girl even got into trouble, right? Because that whole product, there was the board wasn't as female as they purported to. So you got to follow through on what you're doing. But I do see a big movement in representation about it and a really good intention. And I don't think it's a false intention. I think people unfortunately are getting ahead of themselves. And they're doing the right thing and they haven't made the company catch up to the real promise. But I'm fine with that, actually. I'd rather see our people on screen than not, and let the company be forced to catch up than wait till it's all ready and not let these kids growing up see the world the way, you know, it needs to be, and it is. So that's my preference. It doesn't bother me if it's a little not completely true yet. It might offend other people.
Well, last costume change for me. So, haha, just to be
Like, we
festive
need
and celebrate.
somebody in a commercial in that hat.
Exactly. These come from the Renaissance Fair, but I never get to wear this hat ever when I need to. But I'm in agreement. It's such important. You fear that thing that you don't understand. That is one of the articles or one of the tenets of fear. And because I love musicals, there's a line from the last song in Shrek the Musical that is exactly sums up exactly what David said. And it says that it's called This Is Our Story. And it says, we are different and united. You are us and we are you. This is our story. And we forget that, oh, are we going to offend this cohort and that cohort because they've been calling the shots? And I've seen such a shift, like it's almost 180, and it's a little jarring in some cases. I watched it in our company make that shift because they have implemented changes in the company, but I also think socially the policies actually have kind of reflecting what it is, but the minds may have not caught up to that. That's also another journey. You know, you have the company policies and practices, but then you have that, and they're trying to be more inclusive in things in all different ways and making a lot of mistakes. And I'm okay with making mistakes because to me, the opposite of failure, of success is not failure. The opposite of success is learning. And so we have to learn how to do this. A lot more communications and transparency actually makes the backlash less. Like if you say, we're trying to do this, we're trying to understand, if you're having that conversation with your customer body, which I see some brands really, really doing, and if they screw up, they don't, nobody cares. It's like, because they get, okay, you made a mistake, as opposed to this idea that we're going to make this perfect. A brand is, this is going to be the perfect campaign, and that's backfire sauce as far as I'm concerned. It's so easy to get to that place. But if we always remember that, when show up and call things out when you see them, if you're seeing a pitch and you're like, why are there no people of color in this picture? Why are there no same sex? What is up with this? I find it very jarring because I love British comedy, so I watch BBC America a lot. And when I watch BBC America, it's like this is actually America, because I see Indians and Black people and all sorts of people and everywhere all the time, everything. It's like, but the story in England of racism is very different than the story we have here. So that's why it's so jarring to me, because it's like, oh my gosh, they kind of like get this. In a sense, they don't. They have their own forms of this that are just different than what we're talking about here. But that's what I would love to see, is like, it's not a big deal. It should be expected that you see a same-sex couple eating with an Indian lady who has a hijab on. And what's wrong with that? They're having dinner and sharing, their kids are playing in the dining room. Why is that jarring? And yet that is jarring here. And I think we have a walk as a society to get to there. And it starts with people like us, which we control the hands that rock the cradle. We are, if you think about it, the hand that rocks the cradle determines that. When we control a lot of the advertising, the creatives, all of that energy, if we keep putting ourselves in, reminding them that you are us and we are you, I think this starts fixing itself a lot faster.
Love that, Martin. Thank you.
I was just gonna add one thing, which is that there are two examples that came to mind to me. And the first is at the end of 2019, around the holiday time, and Hallmark had an ad that had a lesbian couple, a wedding ad that had a lesbian couple in it, and the Christian right went ballistic on them and they pulled it. And then the left went ballistic on them for pulling it. And it was a sort of an interesting moment, both in that there's still a lot of resistance to representation, even in something that was like really pretty harmless. But then the CEO got fired from Hallmark after that for the decision, and they brought in a new CMO, a new CEO, a really incredibly talented Black woman who's just like a badass, who came in with the and then they also canned the CMO, and they hired a new CMO. So with the idea, that was Amy, that was in, like, if you look it up, it's like December 16th, 2019 is when they, and then in January, it looks like January 22nd, the CEO got let go. So, and then I know, because I have some conversations with them when they were looking for a new head of marketing, that they were deliberately looking to open the tent, like that Hallmark as a brand had become so conservative, and so that this moment for them made them realize that they needed to expand their base and their audience, and and it was a really interesting kind of like back and forth on representation for me. And then the other one that I was going to mention, that I was just looking to, and I was trying to watch to see if there was backlash. When children are involved, there's like the armies come out, right, with their stakes. And you know, they just Nickelodeon just released the new Rugrats redo, and they came out, one of the characters, they outed one of the characters, who, like, by the way, we always knew was gay, any of us who grew up with that, but she's like an out lesbian in the redo, in the Redux. And it doesn't appear that like people lost their shit over it and tried to take Nick down. In fact, it looks like there's some conversation about like, is it performative or not, to your point, Martin, and like, was that really the right move? But it doesn't look like, you know, the Christian right has come trying to get them. But I was curious.
Yeah. It's also, you know, just it's still amazing to me, just with all the controversy around the live action Beauty and the Beast, and you know, and then, you know, leaning into the, you know, LeFou Gaston relationship, so like that dynamic a little bit more than what was already there in the animated version and the 90s, and so like shifting that to, at some point we'll get to there being a trans lead Disney character that no one cares about as a trans Disney character, but might not be all the way there yet. We're pushing up against the hour here. I am just so thankful for this discussion. I do want to make sure a lot of others see it and get to go and digest this, and hope to just get to be inspired by you and just being able to share as much as you have, because I mean, so much of this for me is a learning experience. So much of this for me as a host of the community. You know, Martin knows that I was asking a lot of questions during the resurgence of Black Lives Matter around this time last year, and just learning even what kinds of questions to ask. And so I find this so invaluable, and I just thank all you enough for just being present and sharing all this today.
Thanks for
I wanted to ask a little question. How can we continue to help? Is there anything we can do to help better?
Well, I will say that the one quick thing is not taking anything for granted in terms of it being like small things being very confusing, because, you know, I love the pronoun example. For me, I don't think it does anything for me or for anyone else, and my name and identity are clear enough, and so it doesn't really matter to me to do that. But if I knew that it mattered to others, then I would in a heartbeat. You know, and I think that there are a lot of folks like that who just so also being current on like do I have to say LGBTQ plus or whatever, you know, the next version of that is all the time? Can I just say gay? You know, can I, you know, things like that that might be sort of technical or basic or not even the most interesting part of this conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I love clarifying the boring stuff. I live for the boring stuff because that is where change actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, and to the point where it's still last night, my brothers in town were having a conversation about race, and I mentioned something about blacks, and he mentioned African Americans, and not, you know, all of it's coming from a good place and just in a very like kind of like banal topic of conversation, but it's like, oh wait, you know, we're using different words. Are the same, you know? So any of these kinds of things that come up with these kinds of social and identity issues, it's just like just knowing the latest way to be good allies. And I love the more, like, one part of the discussion we didn't get into is like, what are the, and maybe there's even just more that we can do as a community for this, but what are those things that are coming up in the rooms that people can, that people should go and respond to, right? Like, that's one of those final questions. We might not have as much time for all that, but anyway, just what are those things to look for? Because clearly, if someone goes and like doesn't like an idea and says that idea is gay, like, okay, I know that is something like from the 1980s when I was 10. I knew that was not something you do, and now, okay, yeah, but what are those things that might not be as obvious to well-meaning people? And so all of this, you know, we need a lot of help.
You got it.
Awesome. Look here to help. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for asking me to be here.
All right, have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.